St. Louis, and welcome to What Retirement Means to You with Jerry Means. He is the founder of the Means Financial Group. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. Jerry, it is very good to see you again. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm happy to be here. How are you doing, Spike?
I'm doing great. I really like the topics that you've put together today. You've got ideas that folks need to think about before retiring, and maybe even some of them we want to think about in the beginning of retiring. But great stuff. It's the kind of thing you do in your office every single day. So let's hop into some of these questions.
All right, I'm ready to get started. Let's have some fun.
So, you know, when folks come into your office for the very first time, they're maybe considering retiring, maybe they're coming in to do a review. But when you take a look at their investments, when you take a look at their asset allocation, for people who are, let's say, probably in their 60s, maybe their late 50s, are they properly asset allocated for the age they are compared to what they have in their holdings?
More often than not, I see that they're more aggressive than they probably thought they were or that they want to be. It's not uncommon, you know, you're in a 401k or you're working with an accumulation advisor. You're putting money, you're trying to grow it over time. You're not watching the market as much, you know, especially in a 401k when you're making contributions bi-weekly or monthly to that 401k. You don't tend to pay attention to the market up and downs as much unless they're drastic, because you're making those contributions and getting those matching. But as you get closer to retirement, if you're not transitioning into something that's a little bit more conservative, you know, you could get caught with a downturn in the market right before you're ready to retire, and that could delay your retirement. I always talk about the Warren Buffett quote that, you know, says when the tide goes out, we see who's wearing bathing suits. You know, so
or who's not wearing bathing suits,
you know,
I guess.
For the last 13 years, you know, investors have been the benefactor of a great market, right? The market has just kind of climbed over the last 13 years. Now we're seeing kind of that yo-yo volatility, and it's really putting people, you know, making people nervous about the volatility. They almost forgot that the market goes down, right? It's been such a long run.
So, no, I think that is brilliant. I think a lot of people over the last 15 years, even 20 years, have thought, well, look, if you look at the recency of what's gone on, my accounts just keep going up and up and up every year. This might be the first time in a quarter period of the year they've said, wow, this one hasn't come back. It stayed down 8 or 10%. And maybe they don't realize actually how risky their portfolios are. I also say I don't think it's necessarily their fault, right? Because they've been invested in their 401ks, their IRAs and so forth, and they're at the mercy of the funds that are in there, right? So how do you help them change the gears now?
So there's a rule that says once you're age 59 and a half, you can do something called an in-service rollover. What this basically allows you to do is to take the money that's in your 401k, roll it over to an IRA, even while you're working. When you roll that money over into a traditional IRA, that's a tax-deferred transfer, right? You're not taxed on that move. You can still contribute to your 401k and get that matching, but you're taking the bulk of your assets, you're moving it over to a vehicle. Now inside that IRA, you can work with a financial advisor that can help mitigate your risk. They can help design the income plan for a few years from now when you're ready to pull that trigger and actually retire. We also can diversify among stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, annuities. We can do life insurance planning. There's all of these different tools that we can use where in your 401k you might only have 20 or 30 mutual fund choices, and to be honest, they're not always the best funds either.
Okay.
But there's only one or two maybe safe alternatives inside the 401k. That's why they allow the in-service rollover. So if they're age 59 and a half or older, whether retired or not, we talk about is it beneficial to do that in-service rollover. If they're not quite 59 and a half yet, we can still kind of help them as a service. If they're a client of mine, we will look at their current 401k and try to make sure that they have the best of the funds that they have inside their plan.
You were mentioning some of the funds that are inside the 401ks. If you don't mind, there was another one, because I've seen this, experienced it a couple of times myself, target date funds. Have you seen a lot of those? Are those working for folks as well? Can you also do this with the in-service rollover?
Absolutely. And with the target date funds, all they're doing is the closer that your retirement date is. So if you say your retirement date is 2025, right, 3 years from now, they're going to position you mostly in bonds. because historically that was the safe part of the portfolio. You're in equities when you're younger, you shift into bonds as you get older, that's the safer portfolio. But today with the interest rate volatility, bonds aren't as safe as they used to be, so that's not always the solution now. And almost all 401k funds offer those target date alternatives, but I think outside the plan there's a lot better options.
Last, before we go out to break, the onus of saving for retirement's kind of been put on ourselves. It's great for the companies around St. Louis that do provide pension plans, but for the most part, they're not out there quite as much. Maybe more in the federal field, or if you've done service, a police officer and so forth. So how are people doing with the amount that they're saving on their own for retirement? You see this all the time, nearly 25 years in business doing this yourself. Are people saving enough?
I'm starting to see that trend. People are starting to put more money into their retirement plan. But what I would like them to do is maybe put more money into a Roth plan so that we can have a tax-free bucket. Right. We use the word diversification or asset allocation, right? All these fancy industry jargon words. But what that really just means is, have some of your money in stocks, some in bonds, some in mutual funds, ETFs, diversify the different vehicles that you're using. When I talk about diversification, I also talk about the different tax buckets. I see so many people retiring and the bulk of their assets are in those pre-taxed buckets or pre-taxed accounts. And when they draw off of them, they're going to be taxed at ordinary income tax rates, which are a lot higher than capital gains rates and obviously higher than a Roth IRA, which is going to be tax-free. So I look at it and say, okay, let's look at your 401k. Only contribute up to what the match is. Don't contribute above the match. Once you hit the match, go ahead, take that hit right now. Pay a little bit more in taxes on your annual income because we're in historically low tax rates. And tax rates are more than likely going to go up.
And I think that brilliant in philosophy because, yes, when 401ks came out, that's usually how your employer tried to say, hey, look, this is a great idea, and you don't have to then pay the tax on it this year, and you get to subtract it. But now we're seeing that come to fruition, that people have these huge non-taxed accounts. We're going to have to start paying on them as we're taking them out in retirement, and we're currently in the lowest tax rates in most likely our lifetime. So there's a lot that you can do inside a review for folks, especially take a look at these accounts. Tell me a little bit about your complimentary review.
So what we're offering to the next 10 callers is our on-track retirement review. And part of that will be reviewing your 401k, making sure that we're picking the best options inside there. If you're over age 59 and a half, we can call your 401k company. We can look and see if they offer the in-service rollover. We can look at alternatives for that. But we're also going to address a lot of other things. We're going to look at some tax planning. We're going to look at the fees that you're paying in your other accounts. Are you paying too much in fees? These are all things that are encompassed inside our on-track retirement review. And again, for the next 10 callers, we're offering that to you completely complimentary.
We're going to continue to talk about the ideas you want to think about maybe before retiring or even right at the beginning of retirement, and if you want to get a second opinion when we come back after this break. St. Louis, please take advantage of this complimentary offer. All you've got to do is call the number you see right here on the screen, 844-878-1293. More What Retirement Means to You, St. Louis, with Jerry Means when we get back right after this.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan that we're giving away complimentary to the first 10 people who respond. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have by running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go, and who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review today.
Back to What Retirement Means to You with Jerry Means. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. Jerry, you're talking today about the kinds of things that people should think about, either before retirement, maybe even right at the very beginning, maybe even if they need to do a review. So thank you so much for bringing all of this great information to the surface for us. One of the things I do want to ask about is decumulation in retirement. Which, I guess, funds or buckets do we take from first? We've got possibly two different people. You've got, two spouses. We've got those tax protected accounts. Maybe if they were lucky enough to start Roths, do we turn on maybe the annuity? Do we turn on immediately the Social Security? I want to know which ones I take from first, and I think a lot of people start with the largest one first.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's there's a lot to unpack there, right? So it depends on everyone's situation is different. But there are some kind of general rules of thumbs or things that I could point out. Often with the Roth IRA, a lot of people want to take that Roth IRA money out because it's tax-free. They've had it in there, it's grown tax deferred, they know it's tax-free when it comes out, and so that's the first bucket they want to pick from. But my philosophy on that is, again, we think taxes are going to go up in the future. Why not let that bucket continue to accumulate and pull money out later when it doesn't matter what tax rates are because you're going to have that tax-free. So often I'll look at that Roth IRA towards the
little
back end of retirement.
fine points that I wouldn't be aware. I would have thought the same thing. Oh, how about I start that tax-free money first? But then I'm leaving that untaxed money for down the road, and we all believe tax is likely to go up soon, right?
Yeah, and if you don't use it, that's tax-free to your heirs if that's something that's important to you as well. So yeah, leave that bucket, I think. For most people, there are different situations, but for most people, leave that for the back end of your retirement.
So, of course, you put together an investment strategy and talk about the different kinds of tools people use, but you'll also help them with this decumulation strategy in retirement?
Yeah, I mean, if someone comes in, we will go through and we'll look at all the different accounts, we'll design their plan, and we'll figure out which strategy is going to give them the most success if we stress test that portfolio over longevity.
Right. The next thing I want to ask, though, about it, is it always dollars and cents? Do you bring in lifestyle and how you want to live in retirement, where you want to live in retirement?
Yeah, lifestyle is very important. I mean, I have some clients that come in and they just have everything paid off and they don't want to work anymore and they want to be able the freedom to do whatever they want to do, pursue their hobbies or volunteer, and they don't need a lot of extra money aside from their Social Security and maybe a little bit extra, every month for, going to the movies and things like that. But then I have other clients that want to do big things. I mean, I had a couple come in and they're wanting to travel around the world on a boat. And I've always heard people say, we want to get a boat and travel around the world, right? But they're actually taking steps towards that. They've already been out to the Virgin Islands. They've been taking sailing lessons, right? Because you can't just buy the boat and go out and do that. So they're still working, but that's a goal. We know in 2 years how much they're going to spend to buy that boat, how much it's going to cost to maintain that boat, what the insurance is going to cost on that boat. So it's just like a house, right? We have to look at those expenses. And they want to travel and do that for 5 years. And then they want to settle down and relax because that's going to be their go-go years. I always talk about the phases of retirement. The go-go years, when you first retire, you want to do all of these things. Then you kind of get into those slow-go years where maybe you don't feel like traveling as much, and then
you don't want to be on a boat with 800
and I hate to say it,
other
at the
people.
back end you get in those no-goes where you don't want to get on a plane and fly anywhere. You're just not feeling up to it.
You sound like somebody's financial retirement agent as well, their travel agent.
Sometimes it feels that way, but I think it's really cool that I'm helping them strategize to make their dream come true. And I've had other clients that said, hey, we're going to retire in Florida in our condo. We have another condo for kids when they come down and visit. But they found out during the pandemic that they weren't able to fly back and forth as easily. Right. Their kids weren't able to travel as easily. So they bought an RV so that they could travel and just drive to where they wanted to go. And after doing that, they found out they really enjoy that lifestyle. They sold the condos, paid off the RV, and now they're traveling around. So I'll get a text message or a call, and they'll have a question, and hey, by the way, where are you right now? And oh, we're in New Mexico, or we're in Austin, Texas, and it's pretty cool to kind of hear where they're at, and they send me photos. So I really take pleasure in the fact that I help them do that, right? They save the money, but I help them figure out the plan.
Right, but you brought up something there. I want to ask about that. Do you see that a lot where the plan needs to change midway through the plan? I mean, they bought the condos, they moved out of St. Louis, they were down in Florida, all of a sudden they're pivoting, they sold that off, they've got Winnebagos. That's a big change to the plan. Were you all able to help them facilitate all of that?
Yeah, we were able to look, because what was great is they had so much trust in me because the time that we had built together working towards the retirement, that they called me and asked me, are we able to do this? You know, and I didn't just say yes. I said, let me do some planning and let's look at how the numbers are going to lay out. And of course, when we did that, it made sense, and they were so happy. Like, we feel, if you tell us we're able to do it, we feel better about it. You know, we feel more confident.
I think that's a key takeaway, hopefully, for the viewers out there right now, is call and ask your financial advisor before you make the move, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times people say, I took Social Security at this age. What do you think? I have these houses for income and retirement, but I'm getting really tired of taking care of them. What do you think? And it's like, there isn't a lot you can do after they've made the decision. But if you're involved in the process, you can help them.
Yeah, and that's something that I do get a lot with the real estate. People are saying, hey, I dealt with this for so long, but now I just kind of want someone else to take over for me. So we're able to help people out. The key is your plan needs to have flexibility. Not everyone changes what they want to do. That would be really difficult if everyone did that all the time. But you should have some flexibility in your retirement plan.
Right. So another thing I want to ask you is, can we still consider the concept of retiring early today? I mean, we're living longer than we ever have. There's a big strain on Social Security. If you haven't quite retired yet, can you consider taking a reduction in Social Security? And in previous programs, you talked about inflation and how that erodes away. What about the concept of somebody walking in at 52, 55 and saying, I don't know, I want to retire early? Is that still possible today?
It's possible, and you can, and we can help people figure that out. But there's a lot of things to consider. You know, are you married or are you not married? Do you have a pension? Does your spouse have a pension? You know, what are your Social Security benefits going to be at? Because if you retire at 55, you might have to start at 62 just to keep from depleting other assets. What other assets do you have, and how are they structured? So we can build the plan out, and we can stress test it to see if that is possible. I've had clients come in and they are able to retire at 55. And we've seen that a lot through the pandemic, where people were, you know, downsized and kind of forced into retirement.
Yes, yes.
And they didn't necessarily want to go back to work and start all over at another place, you know, of employment. So I got that question a lot during that time. Hey, can I just do it now? And for some people, I had to give the hard answer and say, really, realistically, I don't think that makes sense. You'll be okay for the next 10 or 15 years, but on the back end of your retirement, you're going to feel the pain. So, you know, we may need to look at some other strategies. Other people, we're able to look at it and say, hey, unless you change the way that you're living, I think that you're going to be okay as long as we make a couple small changes.
Right. And I think another small thing to consider in there is the health care. So let's say you're 55, you're 58. A lot of the people who used to receive pensions and retire early like that, police officers, federal employees, they would get coverage on health care. For those who are outside of that sector, you're going to have to cover those health costs on your own, and they're not inexpensive, correct?
Correct, and that's the biggest factor why people defer their retirement. So often people have the assets that they can retire at 62 or 63, but they're looking at, they can't carry their health insurance over, so they're waiting till they get to 65, and then they're going to retire, and they're going to get a Medicare supplement or a Medicare Advantage plan. And we actually have someone in our office, it's my spouse, by the way. She's licensed, Angela, and she can help with the Medicare solutions and help find out what the right plan is for your health care. So just like the financial retirement plan, we can help you determine what the best healthcare plan is in retirement as well.
Well, I've met her recently, and we're going to have to drag her out onto a show so we can talk about this.
I think that would be a great idea.
Fantastic. Well, talk about the complimentary review. Do you talk about things like healthcare, retiring early, and putting together all of these plans and strategies for drawdown?
Yeah, so actually what I'm going to offer is, to the next 10 callers, we're offering our complimentary on-track retirement review. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down with you in that first, I like to call it a visit, not a meeting or an appointment. It's a visit where we're going to sit down, we're going to get to know one another. I'll answer any questions that you have about my practice, about myself, my family. I'm an open book. I want you to get to know me as well as I get to know you. But then we're going to look at your full retirement plan. We're going to look at taxes. We're going to look at the fees that you're paying, the risk in your portfolio, the health care, and the income plan. And we're offering all of that complimentary to the first 10 callers.
Thank you so much, Jerry. We're going to come right back after this break. Please take advantage of this complimentary offer. The first 10 callers at 878-1293. We'll get your complimentary review from Jerry Means. We're going to come back with actually your real live viewer questions right after this break.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Thank you so much for coming back to Jerry Means and what retirement means to you, St. Louis. I'm your host, Spike Spangle, and like I said, we've got some viewer questions. This is what you do pretty much in the office every day. It's either through emails and phone calls or new clients coming in and so forth. Is people are really just kind of asking you their advice or your advice. What should you be doing about these? So if you don't mind, can we peel back a couple of these retirement onions?
I think that'll be fun. Let's do it.
All right. So I first have Phil here. So my spouse and I are 70 and 60 years old and retired. We have a fixed and a variable annuity. Is this a good investment plan for monthly income? For me there, Jerry, I'm looking for a little bit more information, but what do you think so far?
Yeah, there's some things I'm going to have to find out to really answer that. What are the values of the fixed annuity? What are the other income sources that you have to complement this plan? What are the rates of return that you're getting on these different annuities? And on the variable annuity, does it have an income rider, or is it just a variable annuity that goes up and down with the market? And you may be forced to make a withdrawal while the market is down. That's something you always have to consider. So it's not a blanketed answer that I can give you. I'd have to dive in a little bit deeper, but that's why we recommend, again, I feel like a broken record, but we sit down and we do an on-track review.
One of the things you've talked about before is also trying to uncover what the fees are in them. So they already say that they have them, meaning they've worked with somebody else. That's totally fine. Would you be willing to take a look at them and also take a look at the fee structure and what else is going on in there?
Yeah, so what I would do is if you came in, I would call the custodian. I wouldn't call your advisor or your agent. I would call the custodian, whatever carrier that is. And I'm going to ask some key questions. First, I want to ask, what is the account value as of yesterday's business close? Is there a surrender charge on there, or is it liquid? What are the withdrawal benefits that are tied to the annuity? And then I'm going to go into the fees, especially if it's a variable annuity. What's the M&E fee? What's the administrative fee? What are the rider fees? The mutual fund, you can see there's a lot of fees.
The fees, right? The fees on top of the fees.
So, if you're paying 3 to 4% in fees, you don't feel that as much when the market is up 10, 12%. You don't really pay attention to those. But when you see a 10, 12, 15% market correction, and then you're paying 4% in fees on top of that, you're going to feel those fees. And a lot of times it's too late by then because the account value has gone down. People feel like they're stuck in it. And that's what I feel kind of gives annuities that bad name when people say, well, I don't like annuities. It's because that wasn't explained to them. They were put in that product, and it probably wasn't the most appropriate for their situation. So there's a lot there that we can definitely uncover for a client that comes in, and we offer that in our on-track review.
Right. It's probably hard. You get this all of the time. I've done this. Is this the right thing for me to do? Yeah. And you're like, I need to take a look at it. There's some other things we've got to fill in.
Yeah.
I've got another question for you, if you don't mind. I've got Rory here. The more I listen to your show about the different financial tools that exist, the more I dislike my 401k and the limited investment choices I have. Is there anything I can do to broaden my options, or am I just stuck with what's on their menu? I'm 58 years old. I'd like to retire as soon as I can.
So first of all, I like the idea that you're 58 years old because there is something in the 401k called the in-service rollover rule, which allows you at age 59 and a half to take your assets out of your 401k, roll them into an IRA, and inside that IRA, you can buy individual stocks, you can buy ETFs, mutual funds, annuities. You have much more diversification there. And you also can make withdrawals and can control the taxes if you want. But let's say that you're 5 years from retirement, or how long did she say she was
Let's
from
say it was
retirement?
58 for Rory here, and they said would like to retire as soon as possible. Again, no real plan there, so I don't know if they mean 60 or 62 or 65.
Sure. So that's something we would definitely have to find out. But if you're that close to retirement, you need to have a more conservative portfolio, at least have one bucket of conservative money. We talk about the 3 buckets all the time, the cash bucket, the income bucket, and then the growth bucket. We might need to position some of that money from a growth bucket to that income bucket, have it conserve. Think of the 2007. There was people that were ready to retire in 2008, and all of a sudden their 401k went down 40, 50%.
Right.
Then they threw it into the stable fund because they were scared and they missed some of the upside of '09, and it delayed their retirement for some people 6, 7 years. We're not even talking 1 or 2 years, 6 or 7 years. Well, today we're at all-time highs similar to 2007. We're starting to see that market volatility, and maybe a good time to investigate some more conservative ideas outside of the 401k.
I was going to say, where I thought this was a really light and kind of a simple question of, how do I find some other investment choices? This almost sounds like an immediate need because they want to retire as soon as they can, and they could be way over-invested into riskier stock funds, especially if they don't know. How are you able to take a look into 401ks? Like usually there's a service provider, there's kind of a separation between financial advisors and that. Can you just take a look at the statements?
Well, what I like to do is I look at the statements and I do a review and I stress test that, but I also call that whoever that carrier is, whatever big name where that 401k is held. And I'm going to ask the same questions, what's the account value? Does it offer the 59.5 in-service rollover? And I'm going to look and say, can you send me all of the different investment options? So if they're stuck inside there until they retire because they're not at that 59 age, I can help them manage what's inside that portfolio, knowing that once they're 59.5, I can help them make that transition.
Jerry, thank you so much for answering all of these questions. We don't have a lot of time, 30 seconds. Tell them about the complimentary review real quick.
Sure. So for the next 10 callers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer our on-track retirement review. And when you come in, we will review that 401k and we'll see what options are best for you. We're going to look at some tax planning. We're going to look at the fees that you're paying if you do have those annuities. And we're going to look at long-term care planning as well as your health insurance planning. And we're going to design an entire income plan for you. And that's a complimentary service that we're offering to the next 10 callers. So I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in this week.
Thank you so much for watching. Get your complimentary review. Call the number you see here. More with Retirement and Jerry Means next week.